All right, so last week it was Paul Kagame. This week it's Donald Trump. Plenty taking place on the international front. That's why we decided to bring in our international desk, Sophie Mokoena, who's with us in our studios this morning. Great to see you, Sophie. Thanks very much indeed for popping by. The South African government has responded in a statement this morning to Donald Trump's utterances. The obvious question that many people be asking is whether that goes far enough.
Well, I think there's only this that President can say in terms of the protocol and the policy of South Africa. But I don't think many South Africans are surprised, including the entire continent of the world, because we knew that when Donald Trump becomes the president of the United States of America, a lot is going to change, particularly in relation to the rhetoric that he is known for. This is not the first time we deal with Donald Trump. He was the president of the United States of America. He made almost similar utterances, and the president then had to respond. So there is absolutely nothing new in terms of Donald Trump's posture when you look at countries, because Donald Trump believes that America is a mighty nation, a mighty society, and everybody must just listen to what America is saying. And with that mantra, America first, whatever he says, it's all about America. For me, what's surprising is the people around him. As a leader, as a head of state, you have advisors in all different sectors. They didn't give him information in terms of what this act is all about, of expropriation. If he can take time and read the South African Constitution, he will realize that when the Constitution was adopted by all political parties in Parliament, the issue of expropriation was part of the Constitution. It's just the wording where you always find political parties arguing and fighting. Expropriation has been there. It is there. It is not something new. You find people on the right who are opposed to expropriation. Whether you can say with compensation, they will still be opposed to that because they're going to put hefty amounts in terms of when you want to buy that land, deliberately ensuring that there is no transformation in relation, or you can't address the injustices of the past. When you say without compensation, again, there will be those on the right who will complain. In relation to the left will not be happy with compensation because they believe that who are you compensating? How was this land taken? But even now, with the expropriation, the extreme left, the real left will not be happy because they want to see without compensation. And therefore, this is something that is being argued in South Africa and outside. But I would expect leaders of the world to read, to research, to get their people to give them proper briefing, and then they can unpack. But let's take a listen at what South Africa is saying about this matter. The spokesperson of the president reading the statement in relation to President Ramaphosa's reaction to President Trump. Let's take a listen.
The recently adopted Expropriation Act is not a confiscation instrument, but a constitutionally mandated legal process that ensures public access to land in an equitable and just manner as guided by the Constitution. South Africa, like the United States of America and other countries, has always had expropriation laws that balance the need for public usage of land and the protection of rights of property owners.
Well, I think what's surprising is when the market themselves or the big business can't get it in terms of what's happening with President Trump. All countries are affected. He imposed tariffs weekend on Canada, a neighbor, a friend to the US, China, there has been that trade war for a long time. And therefore, South Africa was not going to be spared either, nor any other country. Looking at the situation in the DRC, Rwanda was not spared either weekend with Trump saying what's happening there, it's wrong. And one is expecting that you may hear later a strong statement coming from the US in relation to the question of the Great Lakes region. So there is no one who is going to be spared.
Yeah.
We saw him talking hard in relation, or a tough talk, in relation to the Middle East question. And as we speak, today he's expected to meet the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu. Expect more sound bites from Donald Trump in relation to the war in Gaza. As you know that you have these two cases in the ICJ and the ICC, that is International Criminal Court. So fasten your seatbelt.
Yeah, as some people say, it's going to be a bumpy ride. In fact, we're expecting those talks around the second phase of that ceasefire to start sometime this week. You made mention of the DRC. Of course, our interest as a country is not only about stability in the eastern parts of that country, but also about understanding the steps that now will be taken to ensure that those 14 SANDF soldiers who have died can be brought back home.
Yes, yesterday evening there were discussions by stakeholders, officials, talking about how do you find a way to resolve this standoff. I expect that this week there will be announcement in terms of what's going to happen. We know that there are three options. You either go, you use the route Burundi to arrive in eastern part of the Congo, Sake and Goma, or you use Uganda, or that's Rwanda. And Rwanda is much closer. Now with the current spat between South Africa and Rwanda, Rwanda becomes problematic. But the Rwandans themselves and the M23 are saying, we are willing to assist. M23, I spoke to them, they are saying, we are not fighting South Africa. South Africa was caught on a crossfire. We are fighting for our rights, and therefore we are willing to help South Africa repatriate the remains of these soldiers and those who are injured, and perhaps those soldiers who would want to leave the area. However, they must leave their weapons, and also they must use Rwanda, the border. But South Africa is looking at this matter. Are we going to be paraded when we arrive at the border in Rwanda? So I think President Kagame, he must find in himself to be a bigger person. Yes, we saw those mercenaries being paraded. Now you have an African country. Are you going to parade an African country the way you paraded the mercenaries? So those little issues needs to be ironed out. It's now the responsibility of President Cyril Ramaphosa and President Kagame to be real leaders on the continent and find a way to resolve this issue amicably. Because they had agreed in April last year to find a way to mend the relations between the two countries. And therefore, I think this is a moment to demonstrate what they promised in April after they were together, that commemoration of the Rwanda genocide, remembering 30 years of that genocide, where they agreed that they will find a way to mend the relations. This is the moment, this is the example of a moment where they can show leadership, both of them behind the scenes, find a solution, because families are waiting. People are waiting, and they have to ensure that they give better leadership, because you don't want to see two nations at each other's throat in terms of this situation. They must now demonstrate that leadership, and I'm confident that before end of the week, we might get better results. And as I pointed out, I spoke to the DRC government, I spoke to Rwanda, I have spoken to the M23 rebels. I'm speaking to the government. It looks like we will be getting somewhere, but at the end of the day, war can never be a solution. A political solution must be found in relation to the Great Lakes region. And we've had the president of Uganda, President Yoweri Museveni, saying that SADC and East Africa community leaders must meet so that they can find a solution, because not one bloc can be able to resolve the DRC issue, because it is a Great Lakes region matter. And therefore, the meeting of SADC and EAC will go a long way, perhaps to bringing down the temperature and also ensuring that the ceasefire holds.
Absolutely. It's a solution that the Rwandan government has already welcomed. So let's see if there's political will to see it through. And then as we round off some of the big stories on the continent, Sophie, we've heard news coming from Namibia, their former president, Sam Nujoma, being admitted into hospital last week. Is there any update on his condition?
Well, he is still there, and are expecting that perhaps later today we'll get a briefing in terms of his condition. But he is senior, more than 90 years old. He has been there for a long time. He liberated Namibia. He supported South Africa's liberation. He was part of those leaders who established the frontline states and support for South Africa to be free. And I think South Africa will be watching what's happening in Namibia with interest in terms of supporting the Namibians as they deal with this problem of President Nujoma being in hospital. But he has served his nation, he has served the region, the continent, and he's quite senior. And I think at this moment what the family would want is privacy and support at this critical moment, but he is still in hospital.
All right, and that's obviously a story we're watching very closely. Sophie Mokoena, rounding off the big international stories at this hour. Thanks very much indeed.